As we reported yesterday, First Republic Bank became the third mid-sized bank in the U.S. to fail in less than 2 months. First Republic Bank is now the second largest bank failure in U.S. history after selling all of its deposits and assets to J.P. Morgan Chase. This comes in a time of turmoil for the economy after the failures of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank back in March. We go now to Tony Minopoli, President and Chief Investment Officer for the Knights of Columbus Asset Advisors. Tony, great to be with you today. We have a lot to unpack here. But first, as you know, yesterday, banking giant J.P. Morgan Chase bought the deposits and most of the assets of San Francisco-based First Republic Bank. Can you break this down for us? What was behind it, and why did this happen?
Sure. Well, the situation really grew because First Republic was seeing a run on their deposits. And when they reported their first quarter deposit, the change, it was fairly significant and the stock came under a lot of pressure. And the FDIC did not want this bank to go under. So they engineered a marriage, if you will, between JP Morgan and between First Republic. Now, this is a little different from the playbook that I would say that used to exist. So, for example, then FDIC Chair Sheila Bair back in 2008, when Wachovia, if you remember, Wachovia wasn't doing well, she engineered a marriage between Wachovia and Wells Fargo. But at that time, Wells Fargo assumed all of Wachovia, meaning not only the deposits in the branches, but the investors as well.
Yeah, and as you know, President Biden spoke about this yesterday. You know, he reassuring Americans that our banking system is safe and everything. But, you know, a lot of people are worried. We've seen several banks kind of collapse recently. And do you think we're headed down to what we saw in 2008?
I don't think this is anywhere near the kind of crisis we saw in 2008, because, in fact, in 2008, what we had was an asset quality problem. We had a lot of, I guess it's not a technical term, but sort of schlocky assets, if you will, that were under a lot of pressure, a lot of structured products and exotic things, if you will. This time, it was really more the fact that because the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates so high so quickly, that the value of the bonds that were invested in by these banks were under pressure. And in the case of Silicon Valley Bank, they sold $20 billion of securities to meet deposit withdrawal requests at a $1.8 billion loss. And over 50% of their balance sheet, rather, was invested in government-type securities. So this is really more of a case of what's happened with rates. Let's say the Fed had raised interest rates 25 basis points a quarter for 3 years. This would have given the banks a chance to really restructure their bond portfolio, but given how high and how fast, it's the combination of the two that's really created the issue.
Tony, another thing I want to talk about, you know, we're here in Washington, a lot of talk about the debt limit. They don't come to an agreement by the beginning of June, a lot of people are worried about what will happen. Where do you see this going? Should we be concerned?
Well, I think in the end, we always find a way to come to a debt ceiling agreement. I remember many years ago when President Obama was president, you know, he famously said, well, you know, the U.S., we always pay our bills. But I think what we have right now is a little bit of gamesmanship between the Republican-controlled House and the president, basically saying we've got to do something about spending. And the president clearly wants to make sure that we adjust or amend the debt ceiling so that we don't have what becomes known as a prioritization of payments.
Tony, almost out of time, but quickly, tell us about the work that you do and how you're able to ensure, you know, that your clients are investing in the companies that really don't engage in practices that would be troubling for the faithful.
We use an institutional screening service to help us basically take the discussions of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, along with a moral theologian that we have on retainer. And between our work, the moral theologian, and our screening service, we basically can reduce the teachings of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to investment rules that we then follow within our own portfolio. And we update the screen list, if you will, every 90 days.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us about everything. We really appreciate your insights. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.